Hello, my name is Vinny Ramos, and I'm building a story-driven RPG where you play as a wizard on the search for the elixir of life. This game is being made for a class, and I'm using Java with no game engine to make it. And I'll just be documenting my progress throughout the weeks. So this is the current state of the game. We have the wizard, this is your main character. And this right here is an enemy. Right now, it's at a pretty early stage, but we do have animations working. So whenever you move, you'll see a little running animation play, left and right. One issue that we do have is that the sprite that we have does not have an up and down, like if you're moving towards the camera or away from the camera. I don't really have an animation for that, so we just use the regular one, the left and right, which looks a little awkward, but I'll have to figure out how to do that. I'll probably have to draw it myself or find another sprite for the wizard. This sprite I found on itch.io. Yep. Okay. So let me show you how the animations work. So our player, aka the wizard, has a list of animations. So he has a run animation, an attack animation, and an idling animation. So this is the idle animation. He's kind of like, I don't know, like bends his knees. The running animation we've seen, and his attack animation, you can see it here. Boom. Yeah. So it has those animations, and those animations get drawn in the game loop. So this is the game loop here, this run function, and this run function calls gameCanvas.repaint, which draws the player onto the screen, and this happens 60 times a second. So when you call the player draw, you'll see that player doesn't have a draw function. This draw function is a part actually of the sprite class. So player extends sprite. So if you look into the sprite class, you'll see the draw animation. So the draw animation draws the current image. So the player has an action, and based on that action we choose the animation. So the player could be running, attacking, or idling, and we'll use that animation for the drawing. So we'll get the next image in the animation, and we'll draw it onto the screen. And this here is in case we want to invert the animation. So this current sprite that we're using only has one directional running, so it came like just this one, right? So I wanted it to be the other way, so you can invert it very easily by just drawing it from this point as the top left point, and this point being the bottom right point, quote unquote. And it makes it look inverted. So how do these animations work, Graham? So the animation, let me show you. So the wizard has this run animation here, which is, let me try to make it bigger. So it's just a series of images, and we play them in a sequence to make it look like he's running. So let me show you how this works. So we have the game loop, which is drawing the player in 60 times every second. The player class, which has a host, like a whole bunch of animations. I'll show the example of one animation. So this animation has a running animation, and this running animation has an array of images. So at the 0 position you have this image, first, second, third, and so on to the end. So you define the animation with a few properties. You give it a path to the sprite sheet, number of frames in the animation, width and height of every frame, and the amount of time you want between the frames. This does require that the frames be equally spaced. So, okay, now our run animation is populated with an array holding all these images, and it has this tracker variable here called current frame, which is just an integer, which gives you the index that you want to be looking at. So currently it starts at 0. So let's say we want to draw the character and he's running. So we'll say player.draw, his current animation is the running animation. So we tell the running animation, what's the next frame? And the running animation's like, okay, let me check. So the current frame we're at is frame number 0. We just started animation. So it goes and it checks, hold on. For how many frames do you want to keep this current frame? For the run animation, that's 8 frames. So 8/60 of a second, this frame will be drawn. So it goes, okay, we're on the 0 frame and we've drawn it 0 times. So we still have 8 frames left to keep drawing this. So it reduces this to 7 and then it returns the current frame. After it does that, it just returns it. After it returns this frame, it's drawn onto the screen in the game loop. Next time you call the draw animation, it'll once again be like, okay, we're on the 0th frame, and then we'll just reduce it to the 6 more frames until it's time. After we call it 8 times, we'll be at duration 0, and when the duration equals 0, we go to the next frame and we reset the duration to 8. So now for 8 more frames, we're going to be drawing this guy. And the same thing will happen until you reach the end of the animation, where it will just reset and start playing from the beginning. So let me show you just one more time what that looks like at the end. So if you can, you definitely can't see it to the eye, but every 8/60 of a second, we change the frame that we're drawing. But it looks pretty good.